June 4th, 1862. Camp Henry McCullough in Victoria, Texas. The new Confederate troops of the 6th Texas Infantry Regiment have been arriving in camp since April. Texas had joined the Confederacy just a little over a year prior, but is still raising new regiments. A private in Company H, John Hiram Patton, had been recruited in April but had just arrived the day before. But John had no plans to stick around. 151 years later, his third great-grandson would start a YouTube channel called the Cynical Historian. Hello everybody, I am Jarrett Ross, a GeneaVlogger, and on today's video, we will be tracing the family tree of Joseph Hall-Patton, also known as Cypher, from the Cynical Historian. Joseph Hall-Patton, who I'll just call Cypher from now on, has been uploading videos to his channel, The Cynical Historian, since 2013, covering all sorts of topics such as history, politics, popular culture, and...
Wilson! Damn it, Wilson! And Wilson, in all his glorious stupidity... Wilson!
Cypher's parents are Mark Hall-Patton and Colleen Hall-Patton. Mark Hall-Patton is a historian and retired museum director who became well known as the Beard of Knowledge on the show Pawn Stars.
If anybody would know anything about it, would be another old drum.
The guys normally call me down when they have an artifact that they want a little bit more information about.
Colleen Hall-Patton is a sociologist and anthropologist who works as an instructor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. The family supplied me a well-built family tree to start from, as well as DNA tests for both Mark and Colleen. When I first spoke to Cypher about this project, I asked him if there was anything he wanted me to look into specifically in his family tree, and one thing he mentioned was he wanted to find out whether or not he actually was related to General George Patton. So I started by tracing up Cypher's Patton line, and things were going smoothly until I hit a brick wall in the 19th century with John Hiram Patton. John Hiram Patton was born about 1836 in Mississippi. His family moved to Texas while John was still a baby, and he grew up in Leon County, Texas. Thanks to the US Census, we know that by October 1860, just a little under a year before the start of the Civil War, 23-year-old John was married with a wife named Sarah Ann Lamb, a local girl who was born in Leon County. Sarah was likely 15 or 16 years old when she married John, and now 17 years old, she and John had a 1-year-old daughter named Emily. Around the country, it has become apparent that Lincoln will win the presidency, and many in Leon County are calling for secession, along with a large majority of other Texans. Within months, a convention is held, with the citizens of Leon County having overwhelming support to secede from the Union, with 534 for secession and only 82 against. Texas soon joins the Confederate States in 1861, and just a year later, John Hiram Patton enlists in the Texas 6th Infantry Regiment on April 23, 1862. A look at John's Civil War service records gives us a view into his military service, which was short-lived. In the service records is a certificate of disability for discharge. This document not only confirms this was the correct John Patton, but also brings into question whether or not he really wanted to enlist. We know this is our John Patton because he is the only recorded John Patton living in Texas who was born in 1836 in Mississippi, at least the only documented one that I could find. But why is John being discharged on disability? In one section, it has, said soldier has been unfit for duty the whole time with the word days crossed out. Then the commanding company officer describes John Patton's disability. Patton shot himself through the hand before he reported himself for duty, has never done a day's duty, nor has he been in the camp but one day, and is entitled to neither bounty nor pay. And this really makes me wonder, what were the circumstances to make John go such great lengths just so that he didn't have to serve? Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find anything specific, but John himself was somewhat of a mystery. Cutting back to earlier, I had mentioned that John Hiram Patton was our brick wall on the Patton line. So who were his parents? According to the tree the family supplied me, John's father was a man named Joseph Irwin Patton, who was born in 1775 in South Carolina, but died in 1843 in North Carolina. But this didn't seem to add up. If correct, Joseph would have been 61 when John was born. Plus, Joseph's death in North Carolina seems out of place, especially with John growing up in Texas. I then took a look at the oldest record that I could find for John Hiram Patton, the 1850 census. John was living in Leon County, Texas with the Scott family and was listed as a student. There's also a Thomas Patton listed, but it is uncertain if they are brothers, especially since it says they were born in different states, but it seems likely that they are at least related. But why were Thomas Patton and John Patton living with the Scott family? Who were they to each other? In researching the history of Leon County, Texas, I soon found that Thomas Scott was the first teacher to arrive in Leon County, so it definitely made sense that they would be living in this house with a teacher if they were students. But then I noticed something else. Sarah Scott was born in South Carolina, and I remembered that in the 1880 census, it listed John Hiram Patton's mother as having been born in South Carolina. So could Sarah be John's mother? And it took me turning to the Texas land grants to be able to figure this out. First, I looked for a Sarah Scott in the Leon County records, and I found a land grant that had also listed a Thomas Patton as a chairman. So to me, that seemed to indicate there probably was more of a connection between Thomas Patton and John Patton and Sarah Scott. So taking my hunch further, I looked for Sarah Patton in the land grants and hit the jackpot. Within this document set is an 1838 clerk note which indicates Sarah Patton was a widow by 1838 and entitled to 1,280 acres of land. Interestingly, this note isn't from Leon County, but Houston County, which is directly to the east. Sarah then turns around in 1847 to sell that land, and it is in these records that we get confirmation that Sarah Patton is truly the same person as Sarah Scott, also confirming our hunch that she is likely the mother of John Patton and Thomas Patton, and why they would have been living with her in the Scott household. I even pulled up an old land office map of Leon County and was able to find Sarah Patton listed. But if Sarah Patton is the mother, then who is the father? One interesting thing I found was that there was actually a Patton family that lived in Houston County, which begs the question, is this just coincidence or are they the same family? I ended up finding a few public trees that actually had John Hiram Patton with a father who is connected to this family in Houston County. These trees listed John Hiram Patton's father as a man named John H. Patton, who was the son of James Henry Patton and Sarah Ann Connor, who were both from Abbeville, South Carolina, but part of the family which moved to Houston County. But unfortunately, there are a few issues with this. Based on all the data I found, John H. Patton would have been born about 1810, making James Henry Patton 14 years old and Sarah 11 years old when John H. Patton was born, which is extremely unlikely. But I also couldn't find any cited records in these family trees that listed this, nor could I find anything that even said that James Henry Patton and Sarah Ann Connor even had a son named John H. Patton. So I thought maybe I should make a timeline of John Hiram Patton's father. That way we can at least get an idea of who we are looking for. First, it seems likely he was born circa 1810 based on the age of Thomas and John, also based on the age of Sarah being born about 1811. In the 1880 census, it shows John's father was born in Alabama, so we can assume that he was likely born in Alabama since it correctly states that his mother was born in South Carolina. Based on the discharge papers from John Hiram Patton, he was actually born in Claiborne County, Mississippi in 1836. Which means that his father was likely in the same area at the same time, assuming that he was around when his wife gave birth. But based on the dates, there's also a question of whether or not John Hiram Patton's father even made it all the way out to Texas. It's possible that he died before they left, and it's even possible that he might have died on the way there. So using this timeline, I took a look through a bunch of different Patton families to see if I could find even just a few good candidates based on this. But unfortunately, I came up empty. While there were a few candidates that slightly fit into this, there were a lot of issues in different areas. But the quest isn't over, because we have Y-DNA. I've teamed up with Family Tree DNA, who have sent Cypher a big Y700 kit so that we can test his Y lineage and see if we can solve this Patton mystery. And maybe we can even try some of the new technology that I recently discussed in my Future of Genealogy video, which you can watch right here. And thank you to my Patreon patrons, most especially Tanae Summers, Catherine Doe-Lizet, Heather Blakely, and Suzanne O'Connor. And thank you to my YouTube member, GWAE48.